Welcome back. I'm John Cale, and this is Level Up, podcast where we're going to talk about the things that you don't know that you need to know. And today we're coming back to the second episode, a follow-up episode with a special guest regarding a broken home, a broken life, and putting the pieces back together. Our last episode, we talked about what it was like and how divorce happens. We talked about what it's like to go through it and then what it was like to try and pick up some of those pieces and move forward. And today we're going to talk about the post situation. Like, how do you move from this has happened, I'm in it, to what do I do and how do I move forward in life? And so today, my wonderful daughter, Whitney, is back for the second episode. Here she is again, looking 24, but really 37. We talked a little bit last time about Whitney's background. I want to remind you also that you can comment on these episodes. You can also send and reach me directly at levelupwithjohn@gmail.com. So it's LVL with John, JOHN, @gmail.com. We also are out across all social media, and you can find us there as well if you come off the links to the podcast that are out there for Apple and Spotify. We're talking today about rebuilding, and it's kind of like when divorce happens, there was a puzzle, and all the pieces were in it. Many of you who have in the past worked on puzzles, I never had the patience to do jigsaw puzzles. The 200 to 300 to 500 to 2,000 to 5,000 pieces as big as this whole table, right? I just cannot do it. It's just too much intense focus for me. Probably, as I mentioned before, from my ADHD, ABC, NBC, all that fun stuff that I had and took Ritalin for when I was young. I just have a hard time sometime with that stuff. So when that puzzle that you had put together in a beautiful picture of your life, and when that divorce happened and blew that puzzle apart, when you do puzzles, how when those pieces are everywhere, it's really difficult to put. It takes time to put them back together. And so after it happens, there are all these pieces, and you really need to start kind of creating a new puzzle and a new way that you're going to function after this event takes place. So Whitney, great for having you back here again today. Thank you. I appreciate you taking the time to come back. And just a short recap about Whitney. She and her mom and I divorced 30 years ago. So Whitney was 6 years old when it happened. And so she has been through childhood with it, grown up with it, come through it. And then, in relationship, married, and has a 6.5-year-old daughter named Stella, who would tell you she's 6.5, not 7 or not 6, in her life. So Whitney lives locally. It's been great that they're close to us. She has her husband, Jeff, her daughter, Stella, and Whitney's background is pretty diverse. She has worked in the family business. She's a realtor. And a mom, and is involved with, what's the thing you're involved with the school thing?
Oh, the homeschooling co-op.
A homeschool co-op.
Yeah.
She's involved in that, and getting Stella to gymnastics and managing that young little girl who has a personality bigger than this room. Trust me. I think at some point I'm going to have her on the podcast. I really, really do. Maybe I'll have her come and talk about being a coroner. Because her first day of school at this co-op, she was sitting in the front row, and the teachers were telling them everything, and they were done doing their presentations, and all of a sudden Stella raised her hand and said, "Hey, got a question." And the lady in charge was like, "Yeah, what is it?" She said, "I didn't see anything about being a coroner and teaching me about that." And the lady said, "What in the world?" And she said to Whitney, right? Like, what is she? Did she say coroner?
Yes.
And so, she literally started with wanting to.
Yeah, she's fascinated with anything medical.
Yeah.
Very fascinated with medical autopsy. Nothing grosses her out. So we'll see what's to come for Stella.
Yeah. So there may be an episode with that one coming sometime in the near future. Okay. So Whitney went to Akron University of Akron here locally, got her degree in psychology. and met Jeffrey, and is using all of her psychology on Jeffrey and Stella now, as well as her dad and any other people in her life as she's worked in the family business. So one of the things that I wanted to ask you was, I talked about yesterday, just real quick, that her and I are very similar. We like to be organized. We don't like to sweat when we're getting ready. We don't like to sweat when we're dressed up. It makes us very irritated. But I was going to ask you, is there something that I didn't say that you would say is something that we're similar, like, or that kind of a thing, that you have a memory or something you'd want to say there?
Oh, there's a lot of memories. There's so many memories. I would say that something that's a fun fact that we're similar, like, is we're a little high maintenance with food. Yeah, that's a good one. I would agree. We both are very into food, the experience, the presentation. Apparently I like experiencing chicken more, but
she's all about chicken,
I don't know if that's actually valid. There's a lot of research I could do in my fridge to prove otherwise, but we'll see. But we're both foodies, I guess you would say.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And I have been called by my mother high maintenance when it comes to coffee. So. Oh
yeah. I've heard people say coffee snob about you, right?
Right. I'm not like a coffee snob. Like, I order things 5 different ways and need sweeteners and all this fancy foam and everything. I'm just like clean, quality coffee, French press, simple. But my mom says that the type of coffee I buy is high maintenance.
She does. And we were over at her house over the weekend, and I had a hit of your coffee, which actually was pretty good. I noticed that it was strong, but it wasn't bitter, and it was smooth. So I could tell the difference in it. So, I definitely could tell it was French press, right?
Yeah. French press. Yeah.
So the last time we were together, we talked about what happened. We talked about the impact, and we talked about the pieces and healing through that. I guess before we go through, I've got about 3 different sections here and questions that I want to present to Whitney and have her share today as we go through the final piece of this podcast talking about divorce. And by the way, just a reminder to some of you that this is something that would be touching probably almost 1 out of every 2 of you that are watching. You've either been through it as a child, you're maybe going through it even with your parents now, and you may be an adult, or you may be in a marriage and you may be going through a divorce yourself or contemplating it. Hopefully there are some things that you've heard last session and this session that will help you in your life as you move forward. So, excuse me. Is there anything, Whitney, from the last session, as we talk about this subject about moving forward today and rebuilding, that you would just, in a nutshell say, hey, look, this would be a thought that I would throw out as we start to talk about the rebuilding process that from the last session?
I would just say I mentioned this last time, but I would say just to keep at the forefront of your mind that nothing is wasted. No experience is wasted. Nothing is wasted unless you don't use it. And like I said, don't let what happened to you define you or your trajectory, where you're going. I also think that I would just say this briefly. I know we didn't get to talk about it a lot because we focused more on the romantic piece of the relationship, but counseling and talking through steps of how do I make, my decisions look different is crucial to be able to communicate that in your marriage, if you choose to be married as you get older and have your own family, or to even communicate that with other people, because there's going to be fallout, from that experience of having a broken home. So it's not wasted. You can use it to leverage it and learn from it and not repeat it.
Well, Whitney makes you bring up something that's really important here that we never talked about the last session. And that is counseling, right? Mm-hmm. A lot of people will joke about that, right? Counseling or my psychologist or, all those kind of things. I I would say that most of the time it's the men who say, I don't need to go to counseling. I think nobody get mad at me or, whatever. You can't be mad at me out there. Because I think this is a true statement that men would tend to be less likely to initiate going to see a counselor for a situation in a relationship or in a marriage. I think typically the ladies in a relationship would potentially be the ones who might say, hey, we should talk to somebody, right? I used to tell Whitney when she was young, it's kind of like changing the oil in your car. If you get a new car and you never change the oil in your car and maintenance your car and change your transmission fluid and belts that go bad, et cetera, right? Your car is not going to last a long time. You're going to blow up the engine. And so if you think about your life in that way, right, and you see the potential to counsel with somebody who's a professional who can objectively listen and look at your life and probably be looking through the window into your life and sometimes see things that you may be completely overlooking, it's kind of like an oil change in your life, right? That's what it's like. It's maintaining yourself. So there's nothing to be ashamed of with that, right? I can tell you, I've been to see different counselors my whole life. And even this past year, we met a lady who is a professional coach and counselor, and she has opened some things up even for me to see at my age, where I have counseled people and seen tons of different counselors. And she has an approach that deals with neuropsychology, which we're not going to get into this real heavy, but the bottom line is she comes at it from the standpoint of our brains and the way our brains work. And, the one thing about all of us is we have a brain and they all work pretty much the same. Some are bigger, some are smaller, but it's kind of like a car. It doesn't matter what year the car is, doesn't matter what brand the car is or the make, but a tire is a tire. And a car right now needs a tire in order for it to run and do what it needs to do. Well, we all have brains, right? It's very much similar to that. And when we begin to understand how our brain works, it plays into this discussion about the divorce. Because a lot of times what's happening is they're just natural behaviors that we've learned, and it's the road that's been built in our life, and that's the road we're used to driving on. And basically what needs to happen is we need to close that road and build a new one going in a different direction and level the ground, take the trees out, get everything set, make the foundation, put in the new pavement, put up the signs, and start driving down a new road. That's what really needs to happen. So we may have some more discussion, but I just wanted to bring up the point about counseling because it's really crucial. And I know for you, we took you to counseling through the divorce for a couple years when it happened, right? Mm-hmm. And then a couple years went by and you came back when you hit like middle school and you went for a couple years. And then you came back when you got into high school, right? Yep. And then after graduating high school, you went back to counseling. And you'd say, well, geez, why? Well, because those are all different places in life where you had to deal with all of the situations around the fact that your mom and I weren't together and apply them to your life as a senior in high school versus, a 6 or 8 year old, because that's a whole different approach. You're thinking different, you're processing different, right? Mm-hmm. So a lot of stuff there. And one of the things that I thought today, every once in a while I'll have a word, not every week, but I've got another one for today. If you remember last time it was hamster from that particular episode. This time the word is change. And the reason that I say that is because when I say the word change, what is it that you feel? Right? When I say change, do you feel like in your gut something go, whoa? Or in your mind, you feel stressed? Do you feel anxiety? Do you feel like, nothing that I like? We probably all have a feeling some way in our body about the word change, right? And no one likes it. I have never met a person in my life that says, hey, I love change, bring it on. I mean, more the better, right? That just is not the way that the typical human being processes. We like routines, right? I think all of you, if you think with me for a minute, you've got a morning routine, right? Some of you get out of bed And some of you don't even get out of bed. That might be part of your routine is you hit the snooze on your clock 5 times and you're late for work or you're late to get up and do what you're supposed to do. And then but it's part of your routine. I always hit the clock snooze multiple times. Some of you take showers at night. Some of you take showers in the morning. Some of you eat breakfast. Some of you don't. Some of you want to go out to breakfast. Some of you want to buy coffee, right? You have a morning routine down to like when you get dressed and where you get dressed. If someone followed you, I would promise you that there's probably a consistent routine. And that's, why? Because you're comfortable with it. Same thing in the evenings, same thing with food. Whitney talked about food just a minute ago, that we both kind of like to, good food and good meals and trying different variety, but you have food you like. And sometimes when something changes and you can't get that food, it's uncomfortable. Right? You don't like it. And your style, you just don't up and change your style and what you're wearing just because, you're comfortable in it, right? You don't want to just change it. And what about your friends? That's another thing, right? So we're very comfortable in our situations where we've settled into life. And guess what? The older you get in your life, the more comfortable you can become in your situation, and it's harder to change. And so if you think about it, if you're not open to change and adventure, sometimes it may limit the things that can take place and happen in your life because we're very uncomfortable. If it's a change we make and we decide, we're good with it. But if someone else, maybe someone we work for, somebody in our family, makes a change on us, all of a sudden, whoa, I don't like that. I don't want to do this thing this way because I'm used to doing it this way and I go on autopilot. Okay. So change was the word for the day. And the reason that it makes sense to us is because that's what it's going to take for you as you walk through the situation with rebuilding and repairing your life from a divorce. You're going to have to walk through that. So Whitney, the first section, what I want to ask you a few questions about is looking back, what were the different pieces that were involved? And so the first question is, after the divorce, what were some of the things that you felt like you lost? Whether it was people, routines, a sense of home, et cetera. What were some of the things that you felt like might have been those pieces? Not only were they, laying around and busted out of the picture, but then they were misplaced and lost.
I think I felt like I lost the ability to be a kid, like other kids. Most kids, they get up, they do their thing, whether mom or dad's there, they go to school, they ride a bus home, or maybe mom or dad picks them up and then they do what they're doing, And for me, I always had a mental preoccupation of, okay, all right, so I'm getting up here. Do I need to take this? Do I need to take that? Do I need to pack a bag? Well, where am I going when I get to dad's this time? What do we do at dad's on this night? What do we do at mom's on this night? Well, when am I coming back? And there was just all this kind of mental energy given to that at a young age that I feel like as kids we're not really equipped to be, going through that whole life logistics and all of those things as a child. I don't know. We're just not really designed to be doing that at that age. So I think that was a huge piece that I felt was lost. And I kind of realized that when I had a child, because when I play with Stella, I just love to watch her and I really try to be present and just take it all in because it's so short. She's already 6.5. And I think I realized I was like, I don't feel like I didn't experience a lot of this like kid fun, free feeling that I feel like my friends had at school. And when we were at recess, I was just thinking about different things. Mm-hmm. So,
well, one of the things I remember, a couple things I remember you talking about, and this was a huge like bell ringer for me. I remember when you got married and you moved in with Jeff, and you guys were in the condo. I remember us having a conversation after that and you saying to me for the first time that you could remember, right, in life, you had a place to live.
Yes.
And I was like, wow. Like again, these are the things that are fallout, right? That you don't think about when there's a divorce. But to your point, you were living in a bag. So her mom and I mean, your mom and I tried to like see you the same. Like we said, look, we don't want Whitney not to see me or see you. And so we would split the weeks up, and I would get her from school and take her to school, and she would come and stay at my house a couple of days, and she'd stay at her mom's a couple of days, and then we would rotate weekends, and that's all wonderful, but that's not normal for her, right? Even though our situation, our divorce was the best situation of a divorce that there could have been, honestly.
Yes.
If there was a good gig of a divorce, ours was that, but it still wasn't good because she was in a bag coming to my house, and then she was there, and then so she had clothes at my house, and then she was at her mom's and she had clothes. Well, now guess what? Like she wants to go to church. Well, whose church is she going to? Well, she ended up going to our church and getting involved in our youth group and our kids stuff every Sunday. Her mom agreed to that, which made that stable for her. But what about friends? You know, she's at my house and there are people around me and my house and my church, and then she's with her mom and there's friends at her house. So it's like this dual thing. And I remember when you got married, you said, Dad, you know, for the first time, I've got a place where I'm living and I don't have a bag. And it was like, wow, I never, ever, this again, unless you walk through it, you can't think like this, right? And so when you were just talking about that, it made me really, really think about that because that was very, very sobering. Did you feel like you had to choose sides or carry emotions for other people during that process? How do you feel about that, or what kind of thoughts do you got on that?
I would say I don't really feel like I had to choose sides as much as I would say the carry emotions piece. Yes. I think because of the nature of divorced parents and then being an only child, I heard a lot more than maybe if I'd had siblings. You know, if I had been off playing with my 2 or 3 brothers and sisters in the same house or something like that, then maybe it would have been different. Maybe it wouldn't have. But I think I did hear a lot of things and carry a lot of emotions. And it kind of just is also probably plays into my personality is probably part of that too. I'm just kind of innately like to see people content and like enjoying themselves, I guess. Okay. So I feel that I probably did carry a lot of those emotions. I didn't really feel like I had to choose sides, but I think you kind of try to morph into like, okay, I'm in this environment. Okay, this is like how I am and this is how this goes here. Okay, I'm in this environment. This is how this goes and this is how this is here. So you aren't intentionally trying to be not genuine, but there is this element of like blending into your environment in a way because there were differences between your house and mom's house. Yeah. So,
yeah. And that's another dynamic, right? I mean, we're different people. So obviously there were some conflicts between us that caused the divorce, right? But now you've got a home over here and you got a home over here and you got rules over here and rules over here and opportunities over here that you don't have over here. I mean, it again, it's kind of a split identity, right? It kind of, you almost had to have a different identity. And a lot of times when there's a divorce, there used to have this thing that I remember a counselor telling me called the Disneyland effect, if I'm not mistaken, where, you know, one parent decides they're going to invest all this money and do everything and give the kid everything because they feel bad that a divorce happened. And so they give them everything. Like, I'm spend all the money. I'll take you to Disneyland. I'll take you to amusement parks. I'll buy you this. I'll buy you that. And I think that, I think Whitney, you would agree that that's really not an answer, right? No. And I would tell you that's really not an answer because, you know, that's just all physical stuff. That stuff will break. That stuff will get old. It'll quit working. It'll go out of style. It'll rip. It'll fade. And you're still going to have an empty spot, right, from the pain that you're dealing with in your life. So, you know, that is something that I think is really important. Was there a moment that you realized that this was kind of like the new reality, and what was that like? Like the moment that you realized, okay, this is who I am now going to be, and this is the situation I'm going to be in. What were you thinking, or what was that like for you?
I think that a lot of it was my friends, just seeing friends at school, seeing peers and understanding like, that's not my reality. That history that their family trips are in their photos and, oh, we're all getting together for, oh, my family does this and whatever. Like, that's not going to be for me. That's not going to be part of my story. But, I can maybe change that, for my child. But I realized with my friends that wasn't going to be my reality. And I do remember, and that doesn't go away, that longing for what was lost as a child. I think we carry that with us now in an abusive situation or in a violent situation, very different situations. I am not even pretending like I understand that. Those are very different situations. I'm just speaking to my situation. But in my given situation, I don't think that longing for what was lost dissipates. Because I remember there was a period where my parents were not in relationships with someone later in life. And I remember thinking, maybe they'll get back together. Maybe it'll be like it was, and that longing doesn't go away because you just, I don't know. As a child, I think you're just designed to want that, family unit. So.
Yep. Nobody, I think we talked earlier in the previous episode, you don't ever have a thought about the fact that my mom and dad won't be together.
Right.
It's not a normal process.
Right. But as you get older, now at this phase of my life, I realize like it is what's best. And the people that are involved in their lives are wonderful. And you guys have always been intentional about your relationship with me. And I think parents, to your point, not to kind of steer away from what you're saying, but to your point that you said about not putting your kids in the middle and the whole gifts and all that, parents that give their kids open space to just listen to them. Like it's a very generic statement that many like mental health professionals say that, kids spell love Time, right? Time is what shows love to kids.
That's good. And
so like, I remember something that you and mom both did very well and still do very well is spending time with me. There's the pieces that I took away and we can't fix all that and rewind. So it is what it is, but we can decide what to do with it. But what you did well was let me talk about my feelings, not make me feel bad. Like I just needed to ignore all these things that came along with that bag of divorce, So that is, I think, huge in taking a child who walks away from that with all sorts of dysfunctional beliefs and biases about a marriage and a relationship versus a child that says, okay, I understand how that happened and what happened to me. And here's how I can maybe not repeat that. Or here's like where my blind spots are and I need to go into my marriage or my relationships knowing this, So,
the other thing about what she said is it varies depending on whether you're a girl or a guy too, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Because obviously the girls in the relationship is more interactive, communicative, need more of that. Now with your brother, Denton,
correct,
who's now 15 in high school, time is something that he doesn't necessarily want to spend with me. I mean,
different.
Yeah,
different people.
Yeah, he's got all this stuff going on, and his buddies and this new thing he's doing. I don't even know. It's like hoorah or some craziness he says all the time walking around the house. I can't even speak it. There's some streamer who goes hoorah, some craziness. Wow. I have no idea what it is. And when I try and do it, he just laughs at me.
Well, we must be too old for that. We don't know who it is.
Yeah, I'm not sure. But anyway, with him, it's different is my point. I try to spend time with him. And being older, I want to spend more time with him, right? And so guys are different, man. Guys are more independent, more fierce. And so anyway, so the second piece, like about rebuilding and the process of rebuilding and moving past, what have you done or are you even still doing to make sense of everything that happened? Like, are there a couple things you can say about that?
There's a lot of things to do, I think, to rebuild. And this applies to if your parents are divorced or just rebuilding from watching a marriage that was great, but there's always things to take away and do better. So in my situation with, seeing a broken home, I think just realizing that a lot of times keeping the long game in perspective, like I always think of that, the long game. And I tell my husband all the time that I love the history that we have, like the history and the heritage and just the journey that we have together, that I don't have to tell him a story that happened 20 years ago when we were working together. I don't have to explain to him my posture on a particular individual, that I knew in this different season of life, because he knows that. And he knows me, and he knows all of the context because of that history that we've been able to build together. And I think realizing that, there's always going to be this unsettledness from this vacancy, and realizing that that's okay. Like, it's not needed to fix it. And the reason it feels vacant is because it does. I think it's similar to when someone loses, a family member or a close friend. Someone passes away, and, people say, oh, time heals. Well, I don't know that time heals. I don't think it ever feels the way it felt when that person was here. But I think, it strains down and shakes out, and in your perspective, and life allows you to process that differently and understand and remember the good things, and you process it. But I don't think it's fully healed.
Yeah.
There are still things that stick with you, but you can use those things for good. I still always have to understand that just because we're, doing something, and it's okay for me to say no, it's okay for me to express a concern or a question or something we disagree on. And it's not confrontational. Like it's just a conversation, like no one's leaving. Nobody's upset, So I'm in a place where that's easy now, but it wasn't at the beginning of our relationship or when I was younger. So yeah, I think that's important. And I couldn't say anything about rebuilding without saying that knowing who you are, and for me, knowing who I am is rooted in my relationship with Jesus. I mean, I don't know how I could be at peace and live life purposefully and not wander around exhausted, seeking approval from everybody else if I didn't have my purpose and my identity and knowing who I am rooted in that. Because otherwise it's exhausting, because you're just constantly doing, let me get this validation. Let me do this. Like, you're never going to be good enough for everybody, and you're never going to make everybody happy, and you're going to let your kid down probably, and you're going to get irritated, and you're going to let your spouse down sometime. And it's like the identity basis being with our person, who, for me, the person who created me is where that purpose comes from.
Well, I would follow up for just a second on that with what Whitney just said. There are two sides to us, right? I've talked about this in the other podcast, is that there is the physical side, which we've dealt with identity, we've dealt with expectations, we've dealt with the road to adulthood, which will be coming out next week. We're talking about divorce, right? But there's two sides. There's the physical side and all the things we talk about, and then there's the spiritual side. And what you just talked about was the spiritual side, right? And if we neglect to realize that the spiritual part of who we are is dead until we find God and meet Him, that it's a doorway in our life that is a room that is locked up, and there is nothing, people, things, places, anything that can get in that space and at all except Him, because He has the key. but we have to give him permission to open the door. And because he's a gentleman, he won't open the door and barge into our life, just like I won't come into somebody's house and be like, hey, nice house, I'm going up to your bedroom, right? Or I'm going to go check your basement out, or what do you got to eat? Somebody I don't know, right? That wouldn't be right. It would be fun, but it wouldn't be right. But he won't do that. He has the key, and he won't unlock it until we give him permission to. And so that is where that the space gets filled, right? And the other side of who we are, and the spiritual side of who we are can be filled, and our lives can be changed. Mm-hmm. So did you feel like there was a point where you felt pressure to be okay when you really weren't? Did you feel that at all, just briefly?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, definitely. I even am that way as an adult. So when most people get rattled and big things happen and stressful situations, I'm like, I got this. We're good. It's all good. But I do have sometimes trouble being, I think because I saw my parents and emotions and some things kind of out of control, it made me feel like I needed to always be in control. And not be like that. I don't know if that makes sense. I don't know. I can't really articulate it, but that's the only way I can tell you it feels, is seeing things in front of me out of control and emotions and stuff like that made me feel like, okay, I need to like be centered and stay calm and be in control, mm-hmm. Which isn't, I'm not saying that's a great thing, but I definitely feel that there were times that I probably wasn't feeling okay, but said I was.
So the third piece of this, Whitney, is just kind of looking ahead from this point, like, where you are, I would say more realistically now, right? And for some of you who are watching, this may resonate with you. Like what does it look like to, I guess you would say, have wholeness or resolution? That's the third piece that I wanted to kind of talk about. And I think one of the questions under that I would ask is, what does family mean to you today? Like, after being through all of these things and walking through all these circumstances, has that definition of family changed? What does it mean to you today when you think back of where you've come from and what you've been through?
To me, family means a safe place with unconditional love and no expectations. Like, I don't have to prove, and my daughter, I hope, feels this. I don't have to perform to a certain level for me to prove my value to you, for you to love me. You just love me, And I think that family for me means also something that creates a history, and history, in order to have history, things are messy. Time together, experiences together, life together looks a variety of different ways in different seasons. So it's not always going to be, holding hands and having these deep conversations and date nights and, every season looks different, but understanding that the beauty in the process of creating that family history. So, the perfection in the relationship is unrealistic, but being one with the process, realizing that the win is that you're walking through the process. You're not giving up. So for me, it's just family is creating that history. Family is staying the course. Family is not giving up, because it's generational. And for me, I am not repeating the cycle. I tell my husband that all the time. I'm like, we are not repeating the cycle. I don't care what that means. It's not getting repeated. Yeah.
It's not, it's not a box that you can check.
It's not. No. So yeah.
Well, you said something a minute ago that made me think about something here real quick. I think I've got another question and we're going to close up here in just a couple minutes, but you made me think about the fact that you said that I accept you and love you. Right. And I think that goes into the concept of unconditional love, right? One of the things years ago, and some of you may have heard this, it's really simple, right? I have a couple dogs. We have a golden doodle who's 4. His name's Jonesy. He's just a hyper emotion wrapped in hair. With a body. That's pretty much what Jonesy is. He leaps off the floor every time we come home. He's like 5-second Bob, right? Like I just walked in the garage. That's all that happened. Shut the door, came back. Oh, he's off the ground. Like I was gone for days. So we have him. And then we have an older dog named Chester, who's 13, and he looks like a little female lion. That's what he looks like. But the reason I say that is because if you take the word dog and you spell it backwards, what do you get? All right. I think most of you on here can spell that, right? It's spelled God. And I don't know that there's a more pure form of unconditional love than a dog. I mean, if you have a dog and you know people who have dogs, they are so loyal to you. They love you, bad day, good day, you know, whatever. They do stuff on the floor, you discipline them, they just love you, right? They go in the house, they rip up something, they steal your food off the counter because you left it too close to the end and eat your whole freaking pizza. And in less than 3 minutes, gone, right? But they still love you unconditionally. They don't have these attitudes. They don't have, and the reason I say that is because that's really the truest form of love, right? Is unconditional. It's love that you don't put a condition on. It's really funny. Yesterday I was watching one of these court gigs where people were in divorce court, and this guy was suing his girlfriend for $25,000 for all of these bracelets and rings and stuff he had given her, because that he had given them to her based on the fact that we're together and we're going to be together forever. So I'm going to give you all of these gifts. And his argument to the judge was, listen, she's not going to be with me anymore. And I gave those to her because we were friends and we were supposed to be together forever. So I want them back. And that is called conditional love, right? Here's 25 grand worth of stuff. As long as you love me, but if not, I want it back. I don't know. I'm going to give it to someone else. I wouldn't want to be that girl, right? It was like, yeah, here's the ring that Susie had. Here's the bracelet Susie wore for a year. But I think you get the point, right? That it's unconditional love. And I think it's really important in the world we live in to love people as people without holding condition on them. We don't have to agree with people. We don't have to agree with things that they believe or do in their life, but they're still people who we can love regardless of their belief. We can still love them. So Whitney, did I ask you what does family mean to you today? And
yes.
how okay, I asked you that one.
Yes.
All right.
Yep.
What if you could offer encouragement to someone still feeling broken or going through a divorce, handling this, maybe thinking about going through one, if you could just kind of wrap this up with something that you might say to them as they move forward, what would you say to them?
Well, I guess that'd be 2 buckets. So if someone's thinking about going through a divorce, I'd say, you know, I don't know the dynamics. Again, there's a lot of different reasons, but you know, outside of something that is physically harmful, abusive, you know, violent, things like that, different bucket. But, you know, if it's different, I would say just think about it, you know, process it. Think about at one point you really liked that person, you know,
That's a good, yeah, right.
At one point you really liked that person. If you're the guy in the relationship, potentially at one point you were the one that chose to propose. So I don't know, maybe communicate about that and don't rule out counseling. You know, you have to find the right kind, but that decision is generational, and that decision impacts the people that decision impacts most isn't you.
Yeah, that's it.
So you're making a decision that's going to impact your children more than you, and it's your choice. It's not their choice, you know? So that's, I guess, what I would say to somebody that's thinking about it. To someone that's going through it, I would say, you know, hopefully you have an open space to communicate with your parents. That's really helpful if you can. If you can't, then maybe ask them if you can talk to someone else. And if you are a parent with children who you've already, been in a divorce, it's okay. They're not screwed up forever. It's fine. You're not a bad person, but give them that space and provide that outlet, for them to process it and know that, whether you were the person that got divorced or you are a kid that's dealt with that or an adult that, dealt with that as a child, that, like I said, nothing is wasted, and that you don't have to repeat that cycle, and that you can take the things that might have hurt you or you felt made your childhood or life a little difficult, and you can use those to make your story different honestly, and help other people. I've had a lot of conversations with, almost half, it's not quite half. I know you said it's not quite half the statistics, but it's close to half of the population having this as their experience in life. There's a lot of people that could probably use discussion about this, so use your experience to help connect with someone else too.
Yep. Well, I want to thank you, Whit, for coming and doing these 2 episodes with us. And, I'm so proud of you, the young lady that you are. I can't imagine, honestly, having a better daughter. You bring tremendous joy, happiness, and you've been such a blessing in our lives as well as everybody else's life. And, I'm sorry that this is something you had to walk through, but I can see the good that's come out of it, right? In making you a stronger woman than you are now through all of this. And, what I'd like to say is as we finish up today, there's a lot of these pieces that are blown up, that come out of the puzzle. And, some of those pieces that can be there from the divorce can be anger, can be unforgiveness, can be sadness, can be a lot of different things that you carry. I think sometimes, I used to tell you, if you remember, I used to tell her all the time, I think every day we have an option when we get out of bed to put on the rubber suit or to put on the sponge suit. Mm-hmm. And if we put on the sponge suit, I think everybody is wise enough to know that what happens when a sponge gets wet, right? It absorbs all of the fluid. It absorbs the water, for example, and a sponge that weighs nothing, that you can flick around in the air and it'll bounce, right? All of a sudden that thing weighs how many times, multiple times more once it's absorbed all that water. So you put on the sponge suit, guess what happens? You absorb everything all day long. And by the end of the day, you can barely drag your butt in the door to bed because you're carrying all of this stuff. Where you put on the rubber suit, what happens? Everything bounces off of you, right? And you don't carry it. And we need elements of both of them, because sometimes there are things people will pass our way that we need to let stick in. But when we're talking about divorce, right? These things can stick on us and carry and drag us down over a long period of time. And one of the things that I would tell you is what happens if you continue to carry that stuff? I'll give you an example of this, right? In not getting rid of it. We have a couple 4-wheelers, and we just bought my son Denton a new quad, and we went out a couple weekends ago, and they're both fairly new. And we went to a place, and I'm just telling you, it was the most muddy situation I have ever been in my entire life. It was a blast. We went to this place down south of Canton. Can't remember the name of it, but they had a lot of different options. You could go in the woods through mud. You could go out in a field through puddles. You had a lot of options. And so we were going through puddles that were probably, I don't even know, man, maybe 2 feet deep, with these things going through them at full speed, maybe going 30 miles an hour and hitting these puddles, and water just, our helmets were covered with mud. Our glasses were covered with mud. And the machines, you couldn't even see. If I had a picture, I could show you my machine's yellow. You couldn't even tell it was yellow. His was camo. You couldn't tell it was camo. They were just covered. But the reason I tell you that is because here was the cool thing. We take them on the trailer when we're done to the car wash. And we go to those car washes where they have like the jet sprays and like the 20 different things. You know, I got the foam, I got the wax, I got the tire thing, the pre-spot, all of that stuff. And we're there for like 30 minutes. It probably costs $30, honest to gosh, for us. But we start spraying those machines, and it's so cool how when we rinse all that nasty mud off, that machine is shiny still under there, right? It looks brand new again. We get all that mud off, and it comes right off because I'm using the right stuff. I'm using the right device. I've got the pressure, I've got the soap, and it looks all wonderful, right? And so I guess what I would tell you is that from a physical perspective, if you've got all this stuff that's stuck on you and you're carrying, right? That you need to somehow let that go and let somebody else like get that off of you, right? And there's no person that's going to do that, all right? There's just no individual that's going to be able to make that change for you in your life. And what I would tell you is that you got to let it go. And I would tell you to turn to the one person who can really help peel that stuff out of your life and change you. He made you, he created you. He runs the planet, he runs the world, he runs the universe, and making changes when you talk to him directly and asking him for help is the only place that's going to happen. And that's really my hope and my prayer for you, that you would take the time to really think about the fact that you might not have given God a fair shake, and that you would turn to him. I would remind you again as well about my book, Finding the Answer by John Cale, up on Amazon, hard copy, paperback, or in electronic version. And I don't stop at the end of this and tell you that because I want to sell 5 million books, okay? I tell you that because I wrote the book, because I believe that if you really will read it, it only takes 30 minutes, and you'll really think about what it says and consider the offering that's in that book. I think that the things that we talk about each week can be touched, and your life can be made new, and you can have a whole new experience in your life that you've never had. So I would urge you to do that. I'm going to tell you that coming up next on episodes, we've got pressure, diamonds or dust, right? We're going to be talking about whether is God for real, and we're going to eliminate the confusion, right? Right now, if I mention that, you're going to be like, okay, what are you talking about? What God, where, what church, what religion? Listen, this is not as hard as it appears to you. And what I will tell you is, if there's confusion about any subject in your life, that means that you've got a bunch of stuff that's not true. Okay. If there's a lot of confusion, then there's something not true there. And so this is not hard. It's very factual, very scientific, and very real for you to understand that subject. And we're going to be talking about that. So please take a moment, share this with somebody, have them go and listen to some of the other podcasts that we've got up. Also, you can email me again at levelupwithjohn@gmail.com. That's LVL upwithjohn@gmail.com. You can also message me. We're out on social media as well. And I just want to challenge you once again to please do something from this podcast. Take an action. Do something for yourself. Add to who you are. Remember, you're unique and there's only one you. And I'm John, and I'm out.